Hey everybody, Larry Berger here, and I'm super excited for this video. And you know what? I just need you to bear with me and stick with me. But we're going to talk about how to win in today's market. And I realize before I get into this, it's going to take a few minutes for me to unpack this, and it's going to be some great information. So don't go away, stick around and follow through. I'm going to follow this up with one more video that's going to kind of talk numbers a little bit more because at the end of the day, we're going to talk about how to win. And then I'm going to have another video behind this that's going to show you how we're going to actually do that. So, first things first, 3 years ago or so, we were in a pretty good position, right? I mean, admittedly, we had energy independence. There was a lot of things economically in this country that were going well and going right, but I don't want to be political. What I want to do is just talk about the reality of why we are where we are today. Okay, so here's number one. What happened and why? Okay, first of all, inflation. I mean, that should be pretty obvious, right? Plain as the nose on your face. Inflation just doesn't help the situation, right? Because the Fed wants to raise interest rates. Why do you think the Fed's raising interest rates? Well, we'll talk about the fact that they think the job market is doing well, but really in reality, it's not. And then number two, the Fitch downgrade. So the United States of America Incorporated was downgraded in our credit rating. Well, that doesn't help on the world stage, and it certainly doesn't help investors feel any better about our mortgage-backed securities, right? And then we're going to talk about the 10-year Treasury yield. Okay, the 10-year Treasury, right, is spread out over 10 years, and the yield is typically, I think it's, 3.75, 4.75, but the spread between interest rates and the yield, which used to be 3 years ago 1.75 to 2%, right around there. Well, now it's 3%. And that's like crazy, right? Because now at 4.75% 10-year treasury yield, we're looking at rates at 7.75. And if it was where it was before that spread, then we'd be looking at rates at 6.5 or 6.75, which, again, I realize it's not 3 or 3.5, but bear with me and let's talk about some of the things that we can do, okay? And so, unemployment, the Fed says, last month we gained 335,000 jobs. That's not necessarily the whole truth. The fact of the matter is that we lost 800,000 full-time jobs and replaced them with approximately 1.2 million part-time jobs. So yeah, the difference is there's more jobs. What they're not telling you is that these are part-time jobs, not full-time jobs. And so guess what? Now you got to work two part-time jobs just to make ends meet. And let's face it, Americans are just not better off today than we were 3 or even 5 years ago. I mean, we did go through a pandemic, and I want to talk about what happened, and we're going to compare what happened in '08 versus what happened in, say, 2021, 22. We came out of that great, bubble burst in '08, '09, and then we came out of the pandemic in 21 and 22. But those two situations are completely different. We are not in a position where we're going to crash at this point in time, and I'll explain a little bit why just a little bit later. But let's talk about where we're at right now. In 2020, personal savings were at 10%. People had personal savings of 10% of their yearly income. And now, in 2023, we're at 3%. Okay. So why did that happen? So we're going to go back and we're going to talk about 2008 and 9, right? What happened? How many of you remember the big bubble burst and what they called the market crash in the real estate market, and housing prices were just hammered, and the banks were just, banks were closing and right and left, right? But we got a stimulus. How many of you remember when we got that stimulus? One of the things that happened was people took that stimulus and said, you know what? We're going to set aside that powder and keep it dry for a rainy day. We're going to save that money. We're not going to go hog wild and crazy, right? Things are a little bit scary. We're going to be smart with our money, right? Fast forward to 2022, when we had that pandemic, everybody was locked down for 2 years, right? And we got cabin fever. I mean, people got the stimulus, we got those checks, and guess what we did? We spent it. We not only spent that money, but we went out and took out more credit and jacked up our credit cards, right? So we spent that savings that we had, we spent the stimulus money that we got, and then we went out and got credit cards. The average home now, I think, has four credit cards, right? And the average credit card balance back in 2020 was $4,000, and today the average credit card balance $8,000. So if you have, let's just say you have three credit cards with $8,000 balances on there, it's $24,000 in credit, folks. It's a lot. It's a lot to have hanging out there, right? Talk about '08 and 23 again. Loan to value ratios in '08. Does anybody remember? Loan to value ratio was 81%. That means that on average across the board, we only had 19% equity in our properties in the United States. 19%. That's not good. That creates panic in the investor market, right? That creates panic in the 10-year treasury. And the investors are going, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I mean, we're hanging out to dry here. There's not enough mortgage insurance on the planet to cover that. What are we going to do? Well, you saw what happened. Guess what? In 2023, we are sitting right now. Here's the beauty, and here's why we're having this conversation, right? We have 42% loan to value. That means there's 58% equity on average in people's homes right now in the United States. Now, that may not be for everybody. There may be people that are just hawked to the eyeballs in their homes because they've taken out one HELOC or one cash out refi after another before the rate started to go up. But let's face it, there's plenty of people sitting out there right now, both from the, prior to the pandemic to during, when we were seeing 3% and even 2.5% mortgage rates, that are sitting on those mortgages now going, wow, am I ever glad that I got that mortgage? However, some of those same people that are sitting where 2.5% and 3% mortgage rates have a blended credit rating or a blended rate in their home of 8 or 9%. Because now you have car loans at 9 to 12%, and you've got credit cards anywhere from 5 to 10 to 30%, right? Credit card interest rates have gone through the roof, and people are taking out credit cards at 19 and 20 and 25%. So when you add all that together and put it in a blended rate calculator, which, oh, by the way, I can do that for you, right? If you need to know what your blended rating is, give me a call. We'll have a talk about that because I'm not just a mortgage guy. I can be a little bit of a mortgage advisor. We can talk about how to make that work for you and essentially create some cash flow and some wealth using the equity in your home. So, moving on, right? We're going to calculate a blended rate for your home. So we understand how we got to where we were, right? Our credit rating got dropped. We have inflation. We have the 10-year treasury spread, the difference between the 10-year treasury yield that basically kind of funds those mortgage-backed securities. They're based on, your interest rate is based on 10-year treasury yield. Everybody, all the investors use it. So it's not like something that's super unique. Okay. So a blended rate, say your mortgage at 3.5%, you got a car at 9, you got some credit cards, three or four credit cards, anywhere from 15 to 30%. Maybe there's a furniture loan in there or something like, or you bought a boat or you bought an RV because things were good and we had a 3% rate. So now all of a sudden you're sitting here going, wait a minute, my blended rate's 7.99%. Okay. And I mean, so you're putting out all kinds of money. So the follow-up video is going to be talking directly to the idea of cash flow. The average homeowner in America today has $250,000 equity in their home, and yet they've got all this money hanging out there at higher interest rates. Yeah, the mortgage is great, and yeah, that mortgage is low, and you've got a payment that's pretty reasonable, and it's definitely manageable. But now all of a sudden, you take your mortgage and you add up your car payments and your credit card payments and these other things, and you've got, 5,000, 6,000, maybe even $7,000 a month lying out the door, and you're trying to figure out what we're going to do about that. Listen, I have some things that we can talk about. We can talk about how, right? And I know you're thinking, Larry, there's no way you're going to talk me into getting rid of my 3.5% mortgage for something in the 6.99% range, which I'm doing, right? We can do that, right? High sixes, low sevens as a wholesale mortgage broker in the wholesale mortgage channel with 50 plus different lenders that I can go to. And these lenders are emailing me every day. We've got this program, we've got that program, we've got these incentives, we can do rate buy downs, and we can do great, and we can save your customers money, right? We've got all sorts of options for all sorts of scenarios. And so I want you to think about what you have going out cash flow wise in your house right now. And then we'll follow up with another video shortly after this where I'll explain a little bit about I'll just explain what I'm talking about because it's super important that you understand that if you're going to try to build wealth, okay, and you're paying those kinds of interest rates, I mean, essentially, if I could save you $1,000 a month over what you're spending right now, what would that do for your cash flow? What would that do for your wealth building? How would you be able to save that or maybe even invest that? Find yourself an investment counselor, somebody who can take care of that for you. And I want to show you a 5 year to 10 year plan that will build wealth and pay off your mortgage early. And we can get talking about that if you just give me a call. And of course, my number is I'll put it in here below 360-580-4249. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you taking the time, and we will talk in the next video. Okay. Larry Berger, Empire Home Loans. Have a great day.